The samurai general, Tadamichi Kuribayashi. He knew his 22,000 men would die. The American invasion fleet approaching his island was unstoppable. But General Kuribayashi had no intention of dying quickly. He transformed Iwo Jima into a fortress so deadly that American Marines suffered more casualties than the Japanese defenders, the only Pacific battle where that happened. For 36 days, his soldiers fought from underground tunnels and caves, killing 7,000 Americans before the last Japanese soldier fell. This is the story of the enemy general that Americans learned to respect. Stay until the end to discover what he wrote to his family the night before the battle. Words that revealed why he fought so fiercely for a cause he knew was lost. Tadamichi Kuribayashi was born on July 7, 1891, in Nagano Prefecture, Japan, in the mountainous central region of Honshu Island. He entered a world of rapid change and transformation. Japan had only recently emerged from centuries of feudal isolation, opening to Western technology and ideas during the Meiji Restoration. The samurai class had been abolished, but samurai values, discipline, honor, loyalty to the nation, and willingness to die for duty remained central to Japanese culture. Tadamichi grew up in this transitional world, raised with traditional values but educated in modern knowledge. His family was middle class, not samurai aristocracy, but respectable, educated people who valued learning and service. His father worked in local government, a position that provided financial security but not wealth. Tadamichi was a serious, studious child who excelled academically. His teachers noted that he combined intellectual curiosity with physical discipline, equally comfortable studying classical literature or practicing martial arts. He embodied the Japanese ideal of Bunbu Ryodo, the dual path of academic and military excellence. Tadamichi attended middle school and high school in Nagano, consistently ranking near the top of his classes. He was particularly talented in calligraphy and literature, composing poetry and studying classical Chinese texts. But he was also drawn to military service, inspired by stories of Japanese military victories in the Russo-Japanese War of 1904 to 1905, when Japan had defeated a major European power and announced itself as a world military power. Like many young Japanese men of his generation, Tadamichi saw military service as both honorable and necessary for a nation that needed to defend itself against potentially hostile Western powers. In 1914, at age 23, Tadamichi Kuribayashi entered the Imperial Japanese Army Academy, the prestigious institution that trained Japan's military officers. The academy was extremely selective, accepting only top students who passed rigorous entrance examinations. The training was brutal, emphasizing not just military skills, but character development, physical endurance, and absolute loyalty to the emperor. Cadets were taught that they were the emperor's warriors, that their lives belonged to Japan, and that dying for the nation was the highest honor. Tadamichi thrived at the academy. He graduated in 1914 near the top of his class and was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the cavalry. Cavalry was considered an elite branch. It required both military skill and the financial means to maintain horses. Tadamichi was assigned to a cavalry regiment, beginning what would be a distinguished military career characterized by professionalism, intellectual curiosity, and unconventional thinking for a Japanese officer. In 1928, the Japanese Army sent Tadamichi to study in the United States. This was unusual. Most Japanese officers studied in Europe if they studied abroad at all. But Tadamichi was sent to Harvard University and various American military installations to study American society, military organization, and industrial capacity. He spent 2 years in the United States, traveling extensively, observing American culture, and developing an understanding of American character and capabilities that few Japanese officers possessed. Tadamichi's time in America profoundly affected his worldview. He was impressed by American industrial capacity, the vast natural resources, and the energetic, pragmatic American character. He traveled from coast to coast, visiting factories, military bases, and universities. He was hosted by American families, learned English fluently, and developed genuine friendships with Americans. These experiences gave him insights that would prove valuable, and tragic, in his later career. Tadamichi wrote letters home describing America in detail. He was fascinated by American optimism, the belief that any problem could be solved through hard work and innovation. He was amazed by American industrial production, factories operating continuously, producing goods in quantities Japan couldn't match. And he recognized that American military potential was enormous, even if America's actual military in the 1920s was relatively small. If America chose to fully mobilize its industrial capacity for war, Tadamichi understood that no nation could match it. These observations should have made him skeptical of war with America. He understood American capabilities better than almost any Japanese officer. He knew that Japan's industrial base was tiny compared to America's, that Japan depended on imported raw materials that could be cut off in wartime, and that Japanese military success depended on quick victories before America could fully mobilize. But Tadamichi was also a loyal Japanese officer who believed in serving his country regardless of personal opinions about strategy. After returning from America, Tadamichi continued his military career, serving in various staff and command positions. He was promoted steadily through the ranks: captain, major, lieutenant colonel, colonel. He participated in Japan's invasion of China in the 1930s, witnessing the brutal warfare that characterized the China campaign. He was known among his colleagues as an exceptionally capable officer with unconventional views. He questioned standard Japanese military doctrine, advocated for better treatment of troops, and emphasized the importance of understanding the enemy rather than simply dismissing them as inferior. By the 1944 Colonel, later promoted to Lieutenant General, Tadamichi Kuribayashi was a senior officer with a distinguished career. Japan was losing World War II. The initial stunning victories of 1941 to 1942, Pearl Harbor, the Philippines, Singapore, had been reversed. American forces were advancing across the Pacific, island by island, moving steadily toward Japan itself. Japanese military leaders knew the war was lost, but surrender was culturally impossible. Japan would fight until literally destroyed.
In June 1944, Tadamichi received orders that would define his place in history. He was appointed commander of the garrison defending Iwo Jima, a small volcanic island roughly 750 miles south of Tokyo. The island was strategically important. It had 2 airfields that American bombers could use to attack Japan, and it sat along the flight path that American B-29 bombers used to reach Japan from bases in the Mariana Islands. American forces would certainly invade Iwo Jima. Tadamichi's mission was to defend it as long as possible, inflicting maximum casualties on American forces. Tadamichi traveled to Iwo Jima in June 1944 and immediately began analyzing the situation. The island was 8 square miles of volcanic rock and ash, dominated by Mount Suribachi, an extinct volcano at the southern tip. The terrain was brutal, black volcanic sand that vehicles couldn't traverse, sulfurous steam vents that made digging difficult, and almost no natural cover. Previous Japanese doctrine had been to defend beaches, stopping invasions at the water's edge. Tadamichi rejected this approach. He understood American capabilities from his time studying in the United States. He knew that American naval and air power would devastate any beach defenses before the invasion force even landed. Traditional Japanese tactics of bonsai charges and defending at the beach would be suicidal against American firepower. Tadamichi decided on a revolutionary defensive strategy. He would concede the beaches, let American forces land, and then fight from an underground fortress system that would be nearly impossible to destroy. Tadamichi ordered his 22,000 men to begin the most ambitious defensive construction project in Pacific War history. They excavated 11 miles of interconnected underground tunnels, creating a 3-dimensional fortress beneath Iwo Jima's surface. These tunnels included command centers, ammunition storage, hospitals, barracks, and fighting positions, all connected underground so troops could move without being exposed to American fire. Artillery and machine gun positions were carefully camouflaged, with excellent fields of fire, but hidden from naval bombardment and air attack. The construction was agonizing. Volcanic heat made the tunnels unbearable, temperatures exceeding 100 degrees Fahrenheit, with sulfurous fumes that made breathing difficult. Soldiers worked with minimal equipment, mostly hand tools, digging through volcanic rock. Many collapsed from heat exhaustion. Some died from cave-ins or toxic gas pockets. But Tadamichi worked alongside his men, sharing their suffering, which earned their absolute loyalty. In Japanese military culture, officers rarely suffered alongside enlisted men. Tadamichi was different. Tadamichi also broke with Japanese military tradition by forbidding suicide attacks and banzai charges. Traditional Japanese doctrine emphasized spiritual superiority over material advantage, the belief that Japanese fighting spirit could overcome American material advantages. Tadamichi knew this was nonsense. American firepower would slaughter Japanese soldiers who charged. Instead, every Japanese soldier would defend from underground positions, inflicting maximum casualties before being killed. The objective wasn't victory. That was impossible. The objective was making the Americans pay such a high price that they might reconsider invading Japan's home islands. Tadamichi issued specific orders: no suicide attacks, no wasting lives in banzai charges. Every soldier would fight from fortified positions, killing as many Americans as possible before dying. Wounded soldiers would not be evacuated. They would continue fighting or commit suicide rather than burden the defense. This was brutal pragmatism, acknowledging that the garrison was doomed, but determined to make their deaths meaningful by killing maximum Americans. He also wrote letters to his family, knowing he would die on Iwo Jima. These letters, later discovered and published, reveal a man who understood the futility of Japan's war effort, but remained loyal to his duty. He wrote to his wife, "The battle will be a difficult one, and this may be my last letter to you. I am confident that I have done my duty to the best of my abilities for my country, and I can die with my head held high." He wrote to his children, advising them to study hard, be good Japanese citizens, and remember their father with honor rather than sadness. On February 19, 1945, the American invasion began. The U.S. Navy had bombarded Iwo Jima for 3 consecutive days, firing thousands of shells. American commanders believed the bombardment had destroyed Japanese defenses. They were wrong. Tadamichi's underground fortress was largely untouched. When American Marines landed on Iwo Jima's beaches, Tadamichi let them land unopposed. Thousands of Marines came ashore confused by the lack of resistance. Then, when the beaches were crowded with American troops and equipment, Tadamichi's forces opened fire. Hidden artillery and machine gun positions erupted, firing into the packed beaches. American casualties were immediate and heavy. Marines dove for cover, but there was no cover on the black volcanic sand beaches. They could only push forward, attacking the invisible Japanese positions that were slaughtering them. The Battle of Iwo Jima became a 36-day nightmare. American forces had overwhelming advantages: naval bombardment, air support, armor, flamethrowers, superior numbers. But Tadamichi's defensive strategy neutralized many of these advantages. Japanese soldiers fought from underground positions that were nearly impossible to destroy without entering the tunnels and fighting hand-to-hand. Every cave, every pillbox, every tunnel had to be cleared individually, usually by Marines crawling forward under fire, throwing grenades and satchel charges, using flamethrowers to burn out defenders. American casualties mounted horrifically. Marines fought for days to capture positions that were just hundreds of yards from the beach. Mount Suribachi, at the southern tip of the island, took 4 days to capture, despite being the initial objective. The famous photograph of Marines raising the American flag on Suribachi was taken on February 23rd, just the 5th day of battle, but the battle lasted another month. Japanese defenders continued fighting from the tunnel system, emerging at night to attack American positions, disappearing back underground before American forces could counterattack.
Tadamichi commanded from his underground headquarters, moving between positions through the tunnel system, encouraging his men, coordinating defensive efforts. He knew the battle was lost. American forces were gradually overwhelming every defensive position, but he was determined that every Japanese death would cost American lives. His soldiers fought with incredible tenacity,
many fighting until killed in their positions, refusing to surrender even when wounded and surrounded. American forces suffered 26,000 casualties in the Battle of Iwo Jima, including 6,821 dead. This was more American casualties than Japanese defenders on the island, the only Pacific battle where American casualties exceeded Japanese. Tadamichi had accomplished exactly what he intended, making the Americans pay a terrible price for every yard of Iwo Jima. The high American casualties at Iwo Jima and later Okinawa contributed to the decision to use atomic bombs against Japan rather than invade the home islands, where casualties were projected to be catastrophic. By mid-March 1945, Japanese defenses were collapsing. The tunnel system had been systematically destroyed, and most Japanese soldiers were dead. Tadamichi sent a final message to Imperial headquarters. "We have fought with courage and honor. We are now out of ammunition and water. The situation is hopeless. We will fight to the end. Farewell." On March 26, 1945, Tadamichi Kuribayashi led the last remaining Japanese soldiers in a final attack. They emerged from the tunnels, attacked American positions, and were killed. Tadamichi's body was never officially identified. He either died in the final attack or committed ritual suicide afterward. His fate remains uncertain. When American forces examined the Japanese defensive positions after the battle, they were astonished by the sophistication of Tadamichi's fortress. The tunnel system was far more extensive than intelligence had suggested. The defensive positions showed tactical genius. Every position had excellent fields of fire and mutual support. Captured documents revealed Tadamichi's orders forbidding suicide attacks and emphasizing inflicting maximum enemy casualties. American military leaders recognized they had faced an exceptionally capable commander. After the war, as details of Tadamichi's life emerged, Americans' view of him evolved. Letters to his family were discovered, revealing a man who loved his wife and children, who appreciated American culture, who understood the futility of war with America, but remained loyal to his duty. American veterans who fought at Iwo Jima expressed grudging respect for Tadamichi. He had been their enemy, but he had been a worthy enemy who fought with skill and honor. In 2006, Clint Eastwood directed 2 films about the Battle of Iwo Jima, Flags of Our Fathers from the American perspective, and Letters from Iwo Jima from the Japanese perspective, focusing on Tadamichi Kuribayashi. Letters from Iwo Jima portrayed Tadamichi as a tragic figure, a humane officer forced to fight a war he knew was lost, leading men he trusted to certain death while maintaining his honor and duty. The film was nominated for 4 Academy Awards and was praised in both Japan and America for its balanced, respectful portrayal. Modern military historians regard Tadamichi Kuribayashi as one of World War II's most capable defensive commanders. His innovative tactics at Iwo Jima, conceding the beaches, fighting from underground fortifications, and forbidding suicide attacks in favor of maximizing enemy casualties represented a radical departure from Japanese military doctrine. If Japan had adopted his defensive strategies earlier in the war, American casualties in the Pacific would have been significantly higher. The moment that defines Tadamichi's legacy came in a letter he wrote to his wife shortly before the battle began. He knew he would die on Iwo Jima. He knew Japan would lose the war. He knew that all the fighting and dying was ultimately pointless. Japan was doomed regardless of whether Iwo Jima was held for days, weeks, or months. But he had been given a mission, and he would execute it to the best of his abilities. He wrote, "I am determined to fight to the last and die defending this island. I do this not because I believe in victory. I know we are defeated. I do this because it is my duty as a soldier and a Japanese man. My men trust me to lead them honorably. Their families trust me to not waste their lives. I will make our deaths meaningful by ensuring that the enemy pays dearly for this island. That is all a doomed soldier can do, die in a way that serves his country and honors his men." That was Tadamichi Kuribayashi, an enemy general who earned his enemy's respect. A doomed commander who made his defeat as costly as possible. a man who understood the futility of his mission but executed it brilliantly anyway. His story reminds us that war creates tragic figures on both sides, men of honor and capability forced by duty and circumstance to fight battles they know are lost, leading men they care about to certain death, serving causes that history will judge harshly. Tadamichi Kuribayashi was such a man, neither villain nor hero, but a soldier who did his duty with extraordinary skill in service of a cause that was already lost.